Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. Before I get into John 15, the true vine, let me talk about key parts of the true vine. These are ideas that you need to get from this section, from the chapter John 15 in general. See, God cuts off the branches that bear no fruit. Okay, those people who aren't bearing the fruit of being the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order and bearing the fruit of righteousness and justice. They must remain in me. They wither without me. They must bear much fruit to prove themselves. And they must remain in my martial heterosexual love. Okay. This is kind of interesting where it has to do with the spirit. The spirit is martial, heterosexual love, righteousness, justice, the moral warrior spirit, what have you. And they must remain in that. So if the gay person wants to go to heaven, he's got to put going to heaven above being gay. If you're not willing to put God before your sexual orientation, then you don't deserve to go to heaven. I'm sure we can all agree on that. I mean, it's relatively petty. So what they're doing with their social engineering and their political, social, and economic movements should be separate from religion, especially when religions play such a small role in people's lives. Okay, they don't take church seriously and so on and so forth. Anyway, obviously I take God seriously, they don't. Okay, they are commanded to lay down their lives for God and the righteous. They're supposed to store riches / fruit in heaven. They always persecute the righteous on earth. There's no excuse for their sin. They who hate me hate God also. Okay? They have no excuse for their sin because of my top martial artist works. Okay, so now let's get into the chapter and let's show you how these ideas are explained in John 15. John 15, the true vine and the branches. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. God in heaven is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes or cleans, is what the comments say, you know, the notes, so that it will be even more fruitful. So he cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. That's why it says in Proverbs, the path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter to the full light of day. So you see these people have been Christians, according to them, for like 40 years. And how come they're just a conformist Flanders-like lemming? How come they're not insisting on moral precision? How come they didn't find their way to me? How come when they come across me, they refuse to obey God through me? Because they're not in the vine. Pretty straightforward. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me as I remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. So they cannot do any work of God unless they're obeying God through me. We know that from Proverbs 16:10 through 12. Okay, and Proverbs 16 in general. Where it's saying you're better off being righteous than being rich and a conformist or anything like that, and being wicked. You're better off being poor and righteous. It also says in Proverbs 16:10, I think it's Proverbs 16:8. So 16:10, it says the divine verdict is on the mouth of the king. Okay, God hates dishonest scales. And in verse 12, it says that the throne is established through righteousness and justice, right? The fruit of being in the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. This gets a little tricky, as the Jews we have today, you know, be it the black Jews who have taken on their religion, or the white Jews, are actually Canaanites. That's why they have that gay way about them, kind of gay, nerdy way about them, kind of craftsman, gay craftsman, nerdy way about them. They're in a Canaanite Phoenician system, Phoenician Canaanite system, where you get the phoenix bird of Greece, okay, which is where you get these Greco-Roman societies. They're kind of Canaanite Semites, kind of Babylonians that migrated through Crete, etc., into Greece and eventually into Rome, and eventually they spread out from there to create the modern Greco-Roman and Neo-Roman system in the world. That's why you have the Club of Rome, a very powerful organization in the world. very, very much connected with the global corporate system. That's why you have so many Greek fraternities and sororities in college. Why of all the nations in the world are there Greek fraternities and sororities in college? Because it's a Greco-Roman system. The Romans had a Senate, America has a Senate, and the connections go on and on and on. Okay, so it says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Okay, so he reinforced what he said in the last verse, where the character in the Bible said, neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. And in verse 5, he says, apart from me, you can do nothing. So you can't do anything unless you remain in me. It's also overkilled by the wordplay. The word vine is a play on words for the letter N, which can mean and or an. Vi, V-I-E, vying for love, martial art, vying, competing against the devil, what have you. So the word vi, when we talk about rhyme and reason, rhymes with the word lie, which happens to be Eli scrambled, Elijah. So it's what is the lie in the story? What are the lies? And what is the truth in reality? You know, martial, marital, right? The bridegroom, the word martial is marital scrambled, martial arts, right? Art and heart, okay? It's right there for those of you who are dumb enough to be racist and to not realize that the Hebrew is an Afro-Asiatic language for a reason. It's not called a Semitic language, first and foremost. It's called Afro-Asiatic, because in a sense, there's no such thing as Semitic. It's just a mixing in the area of the peoples who happen to be the colonists, the empires that occupied the area, like Babylon, Assyria, okay, Egypt, okay, what have you, okay, Nubia to some degree. They mixed with the people there and created the modern Semite. So the modern Semite, when everything is mixed together, it's kind of like me. I'm black and white, but you'd consider me black. Obama, even though he's mulatto, is called black. So the African is the dominant force. It's the dominant genes of the human genome. Okay, just because people use technology to cheat them and abuse them over time doesn't mean that they're not naturally dominant. And of course, like we see with the Jews in captivity in Babylon and Egypt, there's parallels between that and the African Americans' captivity in America. However, just like in the Bible, the masses of the Jews are evil. Okay, it is a certain characteristics we're looking for that are like God. See, it's Cush begot. You see, Ham begot Cush, Cush begot Nimrod. Nimrod was the mighty warrior before the Lord. Okay, they mixed with the Semites in the area. Okay, Ham begot Canaan, who was cursed by Noah. Okay, and Canaan and not Cush, right? Cush is blessed by God as the mightiest warrior. It's right there in Genesis 10. Okay, it's the top martial arts line. It's overkilled in Nahum 3, where it says Cush and Egypt have a boundless strength. So Mizraim, which is Egypt, is also begot by Ham. So Ham begot Cush and Mizraim and Canaan, etc. And Canaan became the dominant kind of negative genes in the Jewish genome, the people you call Jews today. Okay, that's why in Isaiah, he calls them, you people of Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, I'm running out of time, so let's just keep going here. All right. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown in the fire, and burned, right? Thrown in the fire. And we'll get to how the fire, right? Jerusalem is the furnace, and Zion is the fire. Okay, if you see on my other channel, Fume Christ is Proven, I talk about the key words and what the fire means, right? Basically, the earth turns into the realm of fire, right? The angels in Revelation are throwing fire on the earth, among other things, and they're mixing things together with God's wrath to change the world into hell. So heaven and earth pass away, where? Into hell. It says in Psalms, the nations go down to the realm of the dead. You know, the wicked go down to the realm of the dead, rather, all the nations that forget God. All right. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples, so that you bear much fruit. So how do we know that they're disciples? They bear much fruit. Is there another part of the Bible that says this? Absolutely. Jesus says you know them by their fruit. Exodus 15:3, the Lord is the warrior, the Lord is his name. You know them by the warrior spirit. Obviously, it's not the police, not the military, not American martial arts. It's warriors from heaven, not these corrupt groups that you have. It's transcendent Royal African Falcon martial arts. All right. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remained in his love. Again, no offense to the LGBT community, but it is a Royal African Falcon martial arts, heterosexual, right? Straight, heterosexual love. Okay? The Spirit isn't a gay spirit, or gay parade, or gay ice skater, or gay movie director, gay artist, right? It is heterosexual. It's not the spirit of the newscasters on the news. Okay, that's the world, right? The news and lies, Satan the deceiver, what have you. All right. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. So obviously, Jesus is above his followers, and he's citing the order. The order is God, then Christ, then me, right? The Christos, the anointed. Then those who obey him, and everyone else is to be trampled. You see what I'm saying? The true vine versus people who are being thrown in the fire who wither. This is also what he says in Luke 23, where he says, if this is what happens when the vine is green, right? When the grass is green, okay, when it's lush, what will happen when it is dry and withered? What will happen now that you're cut off from Christ after I die, okay, for example, and you have no choice but to wither because no one can be a valid leader after I'm gone. Unlike in this story where he's a character in a story. And there's people who could claim to continue his work in reality, but they didn't. It was not a church order. What they're talking about is a Royal African Falcon martial art order, and just like they did with the fake, they have fake Horuses in Rome, right, where they're emulating Horus. They're emulating Isis. They're coming up with new forms of Horus from what I gather in Rome at the time. They copied it from Egypt. And Egypt, Cush, Ham begot Egypt, right? Ham begot Cush. Black people were the dominant force that defined Egypt. So they copied it from black people, okay? And a certain type of black people is the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order, and I am the last in the spirit of the first. And the first of his works, the wisdom to be a martial artist and to lead humanity in martial arts, in Royal African Falcon Martial Arts, started a long time ago. That was the first of God's glorious works among man, was when he came up with the martial art order, not just common scientists and natural scientists and what have you, natural hunter gatherers and farming, but the martial art order was the first thing that was truly great, the first of God's great works among man. All right. Before that, man was really just a primitive fool. This is part of why they persecute me, because they want to pretend that some scientists mixed with Western military arts is the ideal, and it's really silly of them, really immature. As part of why I'm not proud to be part white. These people need to stop being racist supremacists on the spectrum, and they need to obey God through me and do the right thing. Okay, they've already made it so that their offspring are cut off because of their false pride and their greed and their cowardice and their lack of mental clarity, the lack of wisdom, lack of discipline, and lack of heart. And they just keep digging it deeper and leaving their offspring with more and more of a despicable inheritance instead of manning up and accepting their mistakes and stopping breeding and rallying and obeying God through me.